Hello everyone, welcome back to the Code House. Today is a very special day because in this video we are going to be covering the world's most popular programming language, which is JavaScript. So JavaScript is, as I said, a very popular or the most popular programming language in the world, and it is one of the most used languages because it is one of the three languages that's used in front-end web development. So front-end web development consists usually of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So JavaScript is one of those three. And if you go and type in JavaScript, what you see in Wikipedia is, let's go right here. It is a programming language that conforms to the ECMAScript specification. So we are currently learning ECMAScript 6. ES6 is very new, and it has lots of functions such as arrow functions, constants, and things like that. That is different from the older versions. So if you see here, alongside HTML and CSS, JavaScript is one of the core technologies of the World Wide Web. So over 97% of websites use it client-side. So client-side is basically front-end for web page behavior. So and JavaScript often incorporates third-party libraries and is used for multiple things because it can do logic, and it can basically facilitate the flow of the web page from the front end itself. So you don't need a back end to do the logic and then give it to the front end. So in November 1996, Netscape submitted JavaScript to ECMA International, and it was the starting point for a standard specification that all browser vendors could conform to. So this was the first ECMAScript language specification, and then it started continuing processes, and then now the JavaScript is really popular. So now we are also going to be using it, and in this video I just want to give you an introduction to JavaScript so that you know basically front-end JavaScript, which is a bit different than regular JavaScript. So regular JavaScript is a language, vanilla JavaScript, and what I'm going to use this JavaScript for is what I'm meaning as front-end JavaScript. So I'm going to be introducing lots of different things that you can use on the browser itself without installing anything. You just need to open up your inspector, and then you can just open a file, and that should be enough for you. So open up VS Code, and then click on this File Explorer icon, open a folder, and then you can go ahead and create your file. So we'll call this IndexJS, and we just need to create a JavaScript file, so we're not going to have an HTML file or anything. Okay, so what we're going to do is first create this file, and once we've done that, we need to create our syntax, right? We need to use their syntax to actually create something in JavaScript. So before I get started, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and like the video, and share the video with friends and family. And once you've done that, let's get started. So you should be at this point right now, and you should have a tab opened in Google Chrome, which is which is a browser, and Google Chrome is by far the developer preference for web development, front-end web development. So that is why we're using it today. So open up index.js, and the first thing we need to do is actually specify what all we're going to be learning. So the first thing that we're going to learn is variables and constants. Okay, that is probably the most universally used thing in all programming languages. Variables and constants. Basically, what variables are? They are containers for a value that can change. That's why it's called a variable. So it can vary. And a constant is the same thing, but it's constant. It's never going to change. So you assign a value to a constant, and then that constant can never be changed again. So there are two ways of creating a variable, and then there's another way. So there's one way of creating variable and another way of creating constant in JavaScript. Let's go ahead and see how that looks like. So before we do that, open up your index.js in your file file explorer so that you can open it up on the browser, on your browser. So the way you open this on your browser is by taking this file, copying it, and that should show you a blank page right here that is index.js. So the next thing we need to do is open up our console. So Control-Shift-J on Google Chrome and most other browsers as well, and it should it should open up your console for you, JavaScript console. So hopefully there should be nothing in it, and the first thing that we're going to do, if there is something, is clear it. Okay, so it says console was cleared, and then nothing. So let's go ahead and see how to create a variable. So the way that you create a variable is let, and then you want to actually give a value, and then you want to assign a variable to that value. So this is the syntax for it. So you see let, okay, and then variable equal value. Okay, obviously this is not how you actually create a variable, but this is basically the standard way of creating a variable. So you want to give the variable name first, and then assign it to a value. So before we even create the variable, we want to actually know what JavaScript values are. So what are valid values? The data values that we can use are you can even ask Google what it is. So data types, they're called data types in JavaScript, and they include strings, numbers, booleans, which is basically a true or false value, objects, and then you have other things such as undefined, which means it's not undefined. Okay, and then a number, a string, etc. That's basically exactly what most languages have. So strings, numbers, objects, arrays, and etc. So undefined is also one value. So you can, unlike other languages, you can use you can create a variable without specifying a value, and then just means that the car is undefined. So the type is also undefined. So now we need to look at how we are going to be using it. So in other languages, sometimes you have different data types for a number that has for an integer, or for a number that has a decimal point. 1.32 is not the same data type as 1 is not the same type as 1.1. Okay, but in JavaScript that is the case. So the way you can check what the type of a variable is you do type of and then whatever variable. So type of variable. Okay, and it's the variable's name. So now we need to actually experiment with the variables in JavaScript. So I'm going to go ahead and create variables for all the different data types. Alright, so the first type of variable is a string. So the most basic type of variable, you type in let string equals hello world. Okay, standard programming language string. Okay, The next thing that we want to do is type in let num equal, how about we do 10, okay? And we'll just do 10.3. So the next one is a let, and this type it's going to be a Boolean value. So how about we use let bool equals, and we're going to give it a true or false value. So so true or false has to actually be without strings. Okay, so if you did true, this would actually be a string. So you need to actually do true, like this. Okay, and JavaScript does understand that it's a Boolean. The next thing we're going to do is let object, obj, equals a JavaScript object. So this is the first time that we're going to look at JavaScript objects, and the syntax for JavaScript object is super easy. Curly braces, okay, and you can indent it like this, and then you just have key value pairs. So key colon value, and then oops, what was that? Okay, and then a comma, and then another key is a value, and then you can do it again. Key is value. So I'll be discussing more about what the difference between objects and arrays are in a different video. In this video, I just want to basically explain just what these are. So one thing that you need to do is when you finish up giving key value pairs inside an object, you need to actually end the last one without a comma, because if you do, it's gonna have an error. Okay, so it's just comma, comma, and then in the last one you don't give a comma. And another thing, you don't want to give the same key value keys as so if you did this, okay, you would actually have an error, because there would be 3 values that would have the same key. Okay, so that's not something that you want, because the way that you access a value from an object is by passing in the key. So if you tried to pass in a key, okay, you would actually get an error, because all 3 of these have the same key as its key. So that's just basically what a JavaScript object is. Next one is what an array is. So let r equal, and JavaScript arrays just hold, it's basically a Python list, right? It just holds different values. So so you can have a string, okay, string, okay, 10.2, okay, then you can have true. Then you can even have an object inside here, and you can also have an array inside here, so you can actually nest as much as you want, which is something that JavaScript allows you to do. So now that we've done all this, we'll create one last one. We'll do let na equal, so na is going to equal undefined. Okay, and that basically means na has no value, and so if you but you're not specifying that it has no value. It's just saying it's not defined yet. But if you want to say that another value, so let not equals null. Null means you're specifically saying that this not variable has no value. So you're specifically saying that. However, when you do undefined, it means you haven't passed in a value yet. So it's basically like you forgot. But when you do a null, it basically means you know that there's nothing, and that's just the way you like it. So now that we've done all this, we actually want to see this in the browser. I mean, we want to see something, right? We've created all these variables, right? You can just see this, okay? We don't want to render the text, right? So the next thing that we want to do is actually log these variables. So I said that these variables are basically containers, right? So you can have a container, right? Just think of this as a container, and then it stores a value, right? So, and then you want to actually access this value later, okay? And that's the reason that variables even exist. So the way you do that is by just taking that value. So if I did string, right, obviously nothing would happen because I'm not telling the browser to do anything with string. I'm just saying string. So take an example. If I put cookies, 4 cookies in a jar and labeled the jar cookie, right, cookies, then and then I just told the browser, and then I told my mom cookies, then obviously she's not going to know what I'm talking about. So if I said I want cookies, then basically she would understand what that is. So that's the same thing that we have to do is actually tell JavaScript, tell the browser to print this variable. So the way that we do printing in JavaScript, so there are 3 different things that JavaScript has, which I think I will leave to the next video. So I just want to get to the next part of variables. So I'm going to do, I'm going to create what are called constants now, and you should know what constants are because they are constant. Okay, so that means they are containers, but they never change. So once you've given a value, you can never change it again. So you have to be really careful when you use constant. Sometimes you actually want constant so that you make sure that it never changes again. But most of the time you may want let as your variable keyword. So const is spelled const, and this creates a constant. And then you just give the variable's name, and then you give a value to it. So this time I would do const string equals whatever value I want. So this time I'll do value. Okay. So one thing to note is if I made this a const string a value, right? Even if I try keep it the same thing, so even if I did string equals value, right, the same thing, it's still gonna give me an error because string can never be because this any constant can never be declared as a different value or even the same value again. So this is something that you need to know. So you shouldn't have any errors like this if you don't change the value of a constant. So this is it for variables in JavaScript, and I hope you understood what they are. Please subscribe, turn on notifications, and like the video. Share the video with friends and family, and please check out our other videos on JavaScript. As I said, I'm going to be creating a video on how the 3 different ways that you can use a browser to display something on your browser, how you do that using JavaScript, and that'll be coming up in the next video. So stay tuned and check out our other JavaScript tutorials, and that's it. So bye for now.